Okay then, Ron. So we are in. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast and on a Saturday. Sorry, Sunday and on a Sunday. We were meant to do it on a Saturday and on a Sunday. So you have been someone who I've looked at for a while. We've been talking now for a little while about doing this, and someone who I've really wanted to have on. Obviously, as we go on deeper and we talk about eagles and stuff like that, people will understand why. But just because within the community, falconry community, you're held with high esteem, and you are one of those guys who were getting towards the era of your stories can't be lost, right? Your experiences can't be
Yeah.
lost. So thanks for joining me.
Well, that's no problem, Wesley. Morning, and thank you very much for asking me to come on your podcast. You can ask me any question you want, and you'll get an honest answer. And if I
Which,
don't know, I'll say I don't know.
yeah, which is the best way, right? So like we too many things are scripted now, and too many people want to say the right thing, and I just think that especially in when you once you've been involved with field sports and especially hunting eagles, you really find out that you need to strip the bullshit back because you're going to get caught out otherwise, you know.
Well, unfortunately, if you're going to tell lies, you need to have a good memory.
Exactly, mate,
Uh,
exactly.
when I'm not plugging me boot, but Mike
Oh,
Nichols,
plug away, mate, you plug the book away for sure.
my late friend, when I was asked, I was bullied into writing it, not asked. But I don't deal in sentences and capital letters, and I wrote as I spoke. But I sent him a chapter, and then about 3 months later, I sent him a chapter, and he said, "You've already sent me this chapter," and he said, "It's absolutely word for word." So if you do 2 3 months apart and it's word for word, you haven't made anything up.
No,
It's
exactly,
all in there.
exactly that. Yeah.
So I used to do him a chapter, then I used to send it to him, and then he would put it in sentences, capital letter, and paragraphs.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was similar to me. I had when I was writing mine, my English is okay. But then punctuation and grammar was always more. I could write an email or a good letter, but for writing a book, it's obviously got to be different. So I got an English teacher in, and I instead of having English lessons, we edited my book together, and he gave me
okay.
English lessons through the editing. But he would speak to me sometimes about a chapter, and he'd start saying something. I was like, no, no, that don't sound right. It was on this day and this happened. He's like, oh yeah, no, actually, it's written there because it's true, right? So you can recount that he's made a mistake.
Well, exactly. It's Mike. Unfortunately, we lost him 3 years ago. Very sad. But he basically said, "You realise you've written about 148,000 words in one long sentence," which which basically it was. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's beside the point. Another thing that didn't help, I'm dyslexic. So as you
Wow.
might have seen, if you ever see anything on the Facebook I've done, when I read it, sometimes I think, what the hell is that all about? But it comes out and it goes down there, but because you've thought it and said it, you can't see how it comes up until later. And
Yeah.
then you think, oh, people must think I'm a right idiot. But that's how it is. So you
Yeah. Well,
can't
so
help it.
your process for writing, obviously, my voice is a bit hoarse, unfortunately, but your process for writing, that really intrigues me because like the way that I write is I sort of know what I want to write about, and I'll sit down, I'll start writing, and it'll just become expansive, and I'll extend, and it'll get bigger. And uh, were you the same? Did you sort of know what story you were going to tell, or it became expansive once you started?
Well, basically, it was started because because I tell quite a few stories, and usually the bar out after a day in the field. And they said, you want to get your stories down because, once it's gone, they've all gone, the usual thing. But I
Hmm.
was told, write something about how you grew up, and how, of course, what you went through, and then how you got into falconry. So basically, that's how I started. I didn't elaborate too much on my apprenticeship and my job, but I did a little bit through the countryside. I'm not, I wasn't born in the country. I was born in 1943 in Derby.
Hmm.
My mum was working in the munitions factories, and my dad was in the Royal Navy. and we got bombed and unfortunately hit our house. And we were shipped up then out of Derby up to North East Lancashire. And that's basically where I grew up. So I grew up in a northern mill town, but nobody in my family had ever been a gamekeeper or a countryman. My mum and dad were social animals. Their idea of a good night was my dad waiting on in a pub and my mum behind the bar. And they could both interchange with customers. They both had a good rapport with customers. What amazed me about my dad, he wasn't an educated man like me, but he had a great aptitude for mental arithmetic. And he could be taking orders if he was behind the bar. He ended up being a steward of a club. He could have 3 orders running in his head, one after another, and never get the total wrong. So we
Wow.
had for mental arithmetic. But they enjoy that kind of life. My sister got no interest in anything like that. And why it got stuck with me, I don't know. We ended up, when I was about 9, my parents got a job. Prior to that, they worked in a mill. My parents got a job in what they call an outward bound school, where from the local catchment, they used to send schools up from March to September. And of course, I was living there in an old farmhouse with my mum and dad and our kid. And my mum said, you mix with the other children. So I had to have a table in the dining hall, ate with the other kids, knew a lot of kids, met a lot of kids, mixed with them. And for some unknown reason, I enjoyed the outdoor life. For some inexplicable reason, once I spent 12 months under canvas. I never slept in a house for 12 months.
Oh, wow.
Don't know why.
Just because it's awesome. That's why, because it's how we should be, right?
When the school had closed, I pitched a tent in our front garden and slept in there when they went up to bed. Mum said it's time to go outside. And in the morning, I used to kick sometimes 6 inches snow off the tent. And I did that for 12 months. But I used to, the kid used to go on camping trips. And I said, can I accompany you? The school holidays, I was just about mid 13. And there were some 15-year-olds that were doing the Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award. And the physical part of it, if I remember, that you had to walk 50 miles in 3 days. 4 days, 50 miles in 4 days, and carry all your food. Each rucksack was weighed, I think it was 37 pounds, and your tents and what have you, and climb 3 mountains. And the first day we set off, we did 21.5 miles. We set off at 7:30. We got to Malham, which was where we were heading, 8:30 at night. And I was just about 13. I was quite small. My rucksack backstrap was around my backside with a towel wrapped around it because it was chafing my legs. And that was the first day. And after that, we did the 3 mountains, we did the 50 miles. And they were big strapping lads at 15. I think I just made 13. But it's something I wanted to do. And I think living at the camp school in winter, there was nobody, no neighbours. So you had to make your own arrangements. So I used to wander into the woods and sit about and watch and look at tracks, see what's been wandering about in the snow, and picked a lot of knowledge up and just enjoyed being on my own. I still enjoy being on my own. Being on my own at night doesn't bother me. I used to do a lot of sea trout fishing at night, and I just love the solitude of it.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, so similarly, like I'm from a council estate in Bristol. But like brought up riding my BMX up and down the road, and like playing knockout ginger and running away before people got to the door with my brother. Like went to a local schools, comprehensive schools, etc. Never from anywhere in the countryside. And then we moved to a little small holding when I was about 13, and I experienced the outdoors. And similarly like you were saying, I was just like, I feel like I'm an outdoorsman. Like I'm drawn to it. If there were any Ray Mears on TV or anything like that, I was always drawn to watching. Country File could like always watch it. As where my brother, zero. My brother's never been out hunting with a bird of prey with me, ever. Despite the fact I fly eagles, I've flown peregrines, and he's never once come out hunting. Nobody in my family is. My dad's been out a couple of times, but nobody's a hunter. Like nobody in my family owns tweed apart from me.
Well, I think this is only my own opinion. I think people have got stronger areas in the brains than others. Now,
Mhm.
my late friend, Dr. Mike Nichols, he said, "Oh no, it's the way that your brain's been developed." Well, there was nobody to develop mine. I once stood up. I still go on a shoot. I beat on a shoot. I enjoy the day out. I enjoy the way a big commercial shoot. I enjoy a well-run shoot, how
Mhm.
it's run. And I stood up in the beaters truck a couple of years ago and said, "You look round. There's little demure blonde women that were legal secretaries, there's retired teachers." And I said, "What brings everybody here? It's certainly not the bloody money, that's for sure."
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I think that some people areas, the hunting gene or the whole thing about the countryside and how it works, some people have got a stronger area in there than others.
Yeah,
I think it is.
yeah.
Uh, and there's no, it's like kids. My son, he came out once with the hawk. He was never had any interest in it at all. Fine. It's the old adage, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I never bothered after that. People find their own path in life. And I've been very, very lucky that I found mine and I've had the most wonderful, wonderful life.
Yeah, I mean that's the like we I believe similarly to you. I just think that like we're people think that we're massively evolved, and I think physically we've evolved hugely, but mentally our brain is still very much primitive. Some of us are meant to be hunter gatherers. Some of us are still meant to be gladiators. Some of us are still meant to be all of these primitive things because there's parts or areas in the brain that have not evolved out. And then of the same family, like my brother is not meant to be a hunter gatherer. My brother, you could teach him stuff and he would be able to survive, but I'll go out and I'll look in a stream and I want to know what species are there. I want to sit and watch the kingfishers and I'll get excited when it dives and pulls out a fish. And my brother would be like, "Ah, that was nice to see." So I believe that some of us, we're not as evolved as people like to think. We're not all Elon Musk and we're not all thinking about AI. Some of us are still thinking about what butterfly species are the first that we'll see in the spring.
Oh yeah, I still think AI is artificial insemination. I don't
Of
don't
course.
understand the other bit at all. I
Yeah.
don't really care, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
But like going to school where we did live, this is probably what fired me. We had to pick the school bus up. So we had about a mile walk through fields and across a river to get and pick the school bus up. And more than once I missed the school bus because I was gawping at some herons fishing and I sat there watching them and had gone. And that probably got me going. Then when we had to leave there and move back to a town, didn't do me any good at all, but you just get over it. I got a job. I tried to join the Royal Navy when I was 14 and a half. I was told to come back when I was 15 and a third. And then when I was 14, I left school. I said, "I'm not going back." And my mother said, "Well, you're not lounging about here. Go out and get a job." And I went youth employment. A job had come in as an apprentice upholsterer. I didn't know what one was, but I went because in my world then, you were told, "Get an apprenticeship in your hand, lad. You'll never be out of work." It's not the same anymore, of course, now. But luckily, I got the job. I started at 14, which I shouldn't have done, but we got over that. And I still do the job now. What am I, 81 now? I did a job about 6 months ago. Uh, Never done anything in my life, but in between then, I've tried to make my field sports it work round my living. I've always
Yeah.
worked. Contrary to public belief, people think I just used to wander about talking to customers. But I've worked hard, and an upholsterer's job was hard. I started when there were no staples, there was no foam, it was fibre, flock and hair. You had tacks in your mouth all day because you used a magnetic hammer. And I only ever knew one upholsterer that made it to retirement when I was an apprentice. But you come through it, you stick at your job. I never earned a lot of money, but it was a job where you got quite a lot of professional pride when you'd finished a job. I used to stand back and look at it and sometimes think to myself, how the hell did I do that? But you do, because you pick up wrinkles and you pick up experience. And I went self-employed in 1970, something like that, when I got made redundant. But as for what we're coming round to, the field sports aspect, even when I was a youngster, before I left school, I used to work on a farm haymaking, if he'd let me walk around with a gun. And I started off with an air rifle and then bought a double barrel Lamellas for Belgian folding 410, as we all did then went on to a 12 bore, and I worked on a farm. It started £0.50 a week. It's not 12.5 a week now. So, and I used to get up in the morning, milk 5 cows by hand, walk about a mile to pick the school bus up, come back, milk the same 5 cows at night, work all weekend on the farm for 12.5 a week.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed driving a tractor. So
Yeah.
I was driving a tractor at 12, 13-year-old, yeah. And then when I left school, my interest was still the countryside. Every Saturday in the town, on a Sunday morning, there was an early morning bus. It left at 6 o'clock from Nelson, where I used to live, that went over to Barley, where I used to live, the camp school. It used to be called the Porches Express. I'd get on there at 6 o'clock and I'd ratch round all day around the farms I had permission on. And then if I missed the bus coming back, I'd walk back home, which was 8-10 miles. And you just thought note of it. That's how it was. There was one day when I shot a hare, and I hadn't got, then you needed a game license, and I hadn't got a game license. So I took the hare in a wall, managed to get back on the bus, and then went home, dropped my 12 bore off, and then walked all the way back, which was a good 8 miles, picked the hare up in my back and walked all the way back again.
Wow.
Well,
But I mean, at least you pick the hair up, right? Like, there's people now who are out killing hares and doing nothing with them. Like, it's not my thing, but you walked all the way back to pick your hair up. It just goes to show what hunting meant to you. Hunting was more than going out and killing stuff.
I used to eat what my mum used to cook it, and I used to eat what I shot. Wandered I'll tell you what, I never shot another bloody hare without a game license, that's for sure. But that's how it was. We didn't shoot a lot. It was rough shooting. It was an odd hare, rabbits, wood pigeons if you could get them. And then how I came through that. Then I bumped into a lad while I was out rabbiting, and he introduced me to wildfowling. And the marsh is a wonderful, wonderful place to be in the morning and evening. I was living at home then. He had a cracking black Labrador. And then when I left home and got my own house, I could have my own dog. I saw an advert for black Labrador puppies. I contacted the bloke, and he turned out at the finish, he ended up one of the top retriever field trial handlers of all time, a bloke called John Holstead. His affix is Drake's Head. And I went to John's and I said, this was February, and I said, I want a black Labrador pup dog. He said, when are you expecting to use it? I said, 12th of August, of course, knowing nothing of it. And he said, well, this won't be ready. He said, but I'll tell you what I've got. I've got a 6-month-old yellow bitch. I said, I don't want a yellow dog and I don't want a bitch. He said, let me finish. So I said, fine. He said, it'll never win the Retriever Championship, but it will make you a damn good shooting dog. He said, because training your first dog, you're going to make mistakes, but with this dog, you can rub them out, start again, you won't bugger the dog up. So I ended up said, how much do you want for it? He said, 28 quid. I said, well, I've only got 22, the price of a pup. He said, well, when you give me the 28 quid, if you want, you can take the dog. So I used to give him so much each week. And then after a couple of weeks, he said, look, I know you now, take the dog. So I ended up training with him. He was just starting then in field trials. And then when I training classes, I saw just what a well-trained dog could do. And of course, my dog's got to do that. So I got involved in retrievers. I ran in field trials for a few years. I picked a few awards up. I was never going to set the field trial world alight, but I had a decent dog, and she never let me down. If I dropped a clanger, it wasn't the dog's fault. It was usually mine.
Yeah, exactly.
And that then introduced you to being involved in commercial shoots. First of all, I went beating, and then I was then asked to pick up. And you got into picking up, and then you met keepers. I always wanted to be a keeper until I saw what the keepers actually did.
Yeah, exactly.
And then realised. In fact, I ended up picking up for 15 years on a shoot in Cumbria that I applied for the job for, and I've still got the Lordy turning me down. But I ended up judging a field trial up there. I got on with the gamekeeper really well, like old Dave Brook, and he ended up said, will you come and pick up for me? I said, yeah, if you want. I did that, and then while I was there, I've dispatched an awful lot of game, and I got the finish. I couldn't look a hen pheasant in the eye before I had to dispatch it because it was wounded, of course. And I thought, well, I really want to keep into the field sports game, but I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. And then I heard one of the lads mention a goshawk was sat there at dinner time in the stables. I've heard about that, falconry. And I thought, yeah, it's asked him a few questions. And then I heard there was one for sale. And he contacted me and said, well, I can't sell it because it's a club bird, which I knew note about. So I then started reading up about it. And then I applied to join the British Falconers Club. I won't go into it, but I was turned down about 3 times. And this is going back into the mid 70s.
So how old are you then? In your 20s then, are you?
I was just maybe about 30, around the 30.
Okay, yeah.
Late 20s, early 30s. So I'd done the gambit. I'd had a bit of a brief fling with mates that had long dogs, terriers, been bit of this, bit of that. But as long as it got me out into the countryside, but I know any of those weren't going to be a long term with me. And then the falconry game, and then I heard somebody heard of a goshawk for sale. So I rang the lad up. It was a haggard female. He'd done note with it. And I went to look at it, and I saw it have a fit, and I still bought it. How could you resist? How could you not? How could you not? And of course, it wasn't very long before it had a fit with me and passed away. In fact, it's in the loft. I had it mounted. It's in the loft. And I thought, well, I better go back to basics here. So I thought I'll get a common buzzard. So I put my feelers out, and I got a buzzard. I didn't know whether it was a male or a female, so I called it Mort. If it was a male, it was going to be Mortimer, and if it was a female, it was going to be Morticia. It turned out to be a female. And then what I read was all this like metals, that all you can do is chuck them in a tree and call them back, and then when you're ready to move on, you get a proper hawk, you get a goshawk. And I thought, well, I've seen these fly in the wild. They're magnificent creatures. I'm going to train one, and I'm going to fly it like I see them in the wild, and hunt it like I see them in the wild from the soar. And that's what I did. I never had a kill with it. It weren't for the lack of trying. But perhaps one little story I'll tell you that might amuse you. I went out I used my old Labrador. That I trial. I used to use that with the hawk to start with, and I got access to this grouse moor, and there was a nice slope going up, and I went this particular day, the wind was hitting the slope, and I put the old buzzard up, old moat went up, and up she went, and she was a good high pitch. Bearing in mind then, there was no telemetry.
Yeah.
Nobody had telemetry. And anyway, I cast the dog out, and then I suddenly see the dog. It was quartering, then it went over a slight rise, and I looked up and I see old Moat check. And then she turned over and she came down with the most dramatic teardrop stoop. And then I heard this jangling of bells. So I just shouted at the dog, which I couldn't see, get out. And I went over the top of the brow of the hill. The dog's laid there. The goss is, the buzzard is in front of the dog, tussling and pulling and tugging. I thought, bloody hell, at last I've done it. And I got there, and as I approached, I could see all this white stuff. I thought, oh, it's got the rabbit on its back. And then when I got there, I realised it wasn't a rabbit, it was a bloody great ball of sheep wool. The dog must have shifted the wool out the heather. The wool must have gone rolling backwards, and down came the buzzard and took it. And of course, you go to the depths of it all. But
the buzzard it used to put in its stuff, did it previously, or it would just?
It would change. It would change. The problem with it and with them, I didn't realise then what slack metal meant.
Yeah.
A rabbit would get up and they'd look at it and think, oh, I'll have a go at that. Well, by the time they've decided, they haven't a chance of catching it. But what did really make it for me was when I did decide, I got a chance to apply for an import license for a goss. I had a lad that came out with me, and he was going to get a buzzard. So I said, well, you can take the buzzard. I'll check your mews. I'll check the weathering, where you're keeping it. You can take the buzzard. It's on loan for as long as you want. But when you finish with it, you bring it back to me. You do not sell it. You don't. You bring it back to me. So that's the deal. So I said, fine. Anyway, cut a long story short, he did. It taught him a lot. He brought it back, and I thought, well, it's come out of the wild. It's going back in the wild. I'll hack it back. Because I lived then in a little village on the edge of slopes of Pendle Hill, Lancashire. And I had access to all the ground behind the house. So I stuck it in an aviary, tried to get as wild as I could, fed it up. Let it go in when spring had settled, nice settled weather, put everything, let it go up the back. Then I put a few bit of grub out for it. And 2 or 3 days, I could see it was in the tree across, but it wouldn't come near me, which was good. Then the grub, it stopped coming for it. That was it, as far as I was concerned. That was about April-ish. And then I get about September, October, I get a call from a keeper over the hill. He said, have you lost a buzzard? I said, well, I actually have let one go. I said, does it give you some lumber? No, he said, it's great. He said, it's keeping me pulse in the wood. So I said, fine. Anyway, the year after, I got a goss. I was walking down where I normally hunted it, just out the village. And I'd sent the dog on to work a big patch of rushes, and I could see the dog checking. So I thought, well, I'll drop the dog till I get nearer. So I dropped the dog. And then as I started to move forward, I see the goss turn and look up. And who should be in the tree was old Mort. Well, this is 18 months after I released it. And I thought, well, all right, then I'll keep on the goss can't fly the goss with the buzzard about. So I shouted to the dog, get in. Up went a wog again. Out the tree came the old buzzard and took the wog again. Now,
no.
I never had a kill with it in captivity. But I saw it take the water in fine style. And then as I'm walking back, I had a chat with the farmer. He said, I said, I've left it, it's on the water. And he said, it's been about for 2 or 3 weeks. He said, I've seen it take a couple of raps. Other day it had an half-grown rabbit. Now, as a falconer, nothing could be better than that.
No, that's incredible.
It survived.
Yeah.
it's back where it belonged.
Wow, that is
Yeah,
an incredible story. That is like, I mean, to have that experience with the bird, even though you didn't kill, but to have raised it, let it go, see it surviving and flourishing into what that is an amazing story.
that was wonderful. But what she did teach me, she taught me an awful lot about lift, which stood me in good stead.
Yeah.
And I started to fly else and the gold eagle.
Yeah,
Uh,
so this is another. So this is when we come on to the eagle side of things. Like obviously, I want to know how and why you got into eagle falconry, but also the style that you decided to fly eagles. It's not the style that I fly my eagle. I've done a lot of waiting on flying with Roy Lupton up in Scotland. It's not my style just because of where I live. I live in Bristol in the southwest,
yeah,
and you don't want a golden eagle at 1,000 feet above people walking Yorkshire Terriers. But yourself, it is like I am interested to know what made you go towards the eagles, and then why you chose the slope soaring. But I mean, I guess it's something that you always fancied from flying the buzzard, I guess.
yeah. Well, yeah. But basically, as well as I did Hunter for, I did 28 consecutive seasons with her.
Wow.
I started off with her at 34, and when she sadly passed away, I was 62. So that's a it's a huge part of your life.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But in between, I wanted to do the not the full falconry gamut, but I got when I started to reiterate falconry, it was like a step ladder,
Yeah.
right? The only way you could meet other falconers were through clubs. There
Yeah.
was nothing else but clubs.
Hmm.
The two main clubs were the Welsh Hawking Club and the British Falconers Club.
Yeah.
Now, the British Falconers Club, you were you were honoured if they'd allow him to be a member. As I said, I had a slight disagreement with the then secretary, and he barred me for about 18 months. I used to then only have a meeting every 6 months.
Yeah.
And for the first three meetings, I had to sit outside the main meeting with the wives and girlfriends because I weren't allowed to go into the meeting. I eventually I got in, but that again is another story. But the thing was, when you started then, if you're interested in long wings, you got a kestrel. If
Yeah.
you're interested in short wings, you got a buzzard. Then from a kestrel, you moved on to possibly a lugger
Hmm.
or a hammer. I asked for a peregrine unless you're in the falconry hierarchy. Your chance of getting your hands on a peregrine are about nil. In
So are
fact,
we sorry to cut you off there, Ron. Are we talking um wild take birds or are we talking captive bred?
there weren't any captive bred. They
Right.
were all wild take.
Yeah.
Right. The licensing system then, well, there might have been an odd captive bred, but they certainly didn't come on the market, even for
Yeah.
someone like me, even if you had the brass. Well, you've heard of a falcon called John Fairclough.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, John Fairclough did an awful lot for falconry. Even John couldn't get his hands on a peregrine. He ended up, his first peregrine he got, the BFC had got two club peregrines that they'd done a deal with some overseas club that they ended up getting two peregrines anyway. And John actually gave the British Falconers Club a non-returnable, sizable deposit just to be able to fly those falcons. And even
Wow.
John could get his hands on one. We're talking now mid-70s, something like that.
Yeah.
So then you went into you got onto the step ladder, and then with if you flew, you went from a kestrel, you went a lanner or lugger. Now then, this is what they used to say, the hierarchy in the BFC or in the falconry world used to say, oh, well, we'll keep his eye on you, lad. And when we think you're good enough, somebody will give you a peregrine. That was, this is not made up. This is how it was.
Yeah.
And the first British Falconers Club field meeting I went to, they hadn't admitted me as a member then, but I managed to get in the side door. So I've been flying a Gosso, and then one of the lads asked me if he'd fly at the meeting and what have you. So I was interested to see how the long wings went on. Well, you read it in the books, and unfortunately, it didn't appear as it was in the books. It was an absolute catastrophe. And then John Fairclough came up to a meeting with one of the club falcons. Now, what John had done, John was a successful businessman. He'd come into falcon, went for the Goshawk route, and then he realised he knew naught about peregrines. So he employed a man called Malcolm Brockless. And Malcolm Brockless ended up working for the Game Conservancy for the last 30 years as their head gamekeeper. And he employed him as a falconer come gamekeeper because Malcolm had worked with peregrines. So it was Malcolm that put John in the picture with peregrines. And John turned up at this meeting with Coco, which was then probably the most well-known falcon in this country. And
Tiercel or female?
it was a Tiercel.
Yeah.
Tiercel. Compared to what's being flown today, it was not special. But in those days, it was unbelievable. And what it was meat actually was under control. And it was what I'd read about in the books. And I thought,
Yeah.
blimey, if I ever get my hands on one, that's what mine's got to do. So I ended up, I'd been flying a goss. I got access to a little grouse moor. So 3 of us joined a little grouse moor. So one lad had a peregrine, another lad had a peregrine but wouldn't fly it in case he lost it. And he was flying a secret. And I hadn't got a hawk. Well, Pete Wall, God rest his soul, Pete had got a Passage Lammer that he brought in. I only flown it to the lure. And he said, well, you can try that if you want. I got a good dog. I got a good English pointer. And the first season on the moor, we had 2 knockdowns, which were both down to Pete's Lammer, which I was flying his Lammer for him. And then the year after, I said, well, it's not man enough for the game. So I was offered a Prairie Falcon that had never been flown. He wanted it flying for a season and then put it in an aviary for breeding. And that was probably the female Prairie that all of these hybrids came from, that one. So I flew her for a season. I think my sole tally for the season was a racing pigeon that was bathing in a pool, a mixie rabbit, a stoat, and a cockerel. So that was my total for my grouse hawking.
What a game bag. Lovely game diary.
So at the end of it, the year after, I said, look, if I can't get my hands on a tool for the job, I am not paying a third towards the grouse moor. And Pete Wall then is female. He bred 2 Tiercels, and he very, very kindly gave me a Tiercel, Nasty Louis. And he gave another late friend of mine a Tiercel. And mine was as wayward as hell. There's a very famous grouse hawking falconer called Alistair McKisser in Scotland. Yep. I rang Alistair up, who I'd met about 3 years earlier. I said, I've been given a Tiercel, Alistair. I want some advice, please. He said, what are you intending to do? I said, I'm intending to grouse hawk with it. First of all, you need a good dog. So I got one. And he just said, the timing of the flush is imperative. And it may take you a full season to get the correct weight of your falcon. Because first year peregrines are playfully aggressive, particularly Tiercels. He might check at crows. He said, but he's only playing, but they won't do any harm. He checked at 6 crows. He killed 5. Every time you got to him, they were in the same position. The crow was on its back, and he'd throttled it with both feet round its neck. Yeah. And I was losing control of it. So I realised I had to do something fairly quick. So I did a bit of homework. And one of the lads that used to be in our grouse moor syndicate was the ex-secretary of the BFC, who wouldn't let me in for 18 months. And he said, you're flying that falcon you're flying, it's too low. Telling you, it's weight putting up. Anyway, we went out after I'd had about a fortnight. So we say retraining it in my way. I went out, got a point, put it up. It was like textbook, straight over me. it didn't kill the grouse, it missed it, but it come back down. I said, bloody hell, that tail's changed. What have you done to it? I said, I've altered its weight. He said, I told you it was flying too high. You were flying it too low. I said, I've actually took off an ounce of it. Oh, and that the words of Alistair's were ringing in my head. Could take you 12 months, a full season, to get the proper weight of it. Don't forget, then we hadn't got the backup of telemetry. You couldn't experiment, because if your experiment went wrong, your hawk had gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
I mean, I think as well, like now, too many people buy a bird with a weight already in their head of what it's going to fly at. So I mean, the most I've seen it is with goshawks, because I spent a lot of time with goshawks. And people say, oh, it's a 2 pound male. That'll fly at £1.11. That'll fly, and I'm like, whoa, like, and I've been out with birds and they'll fly, but they have to be recalled with a lure or a carcass, or this bird will fly everything but duck. I'm like, it's not a weight. Like, it's not. You need to find the weight. They'll fly and do everything. Like, and yeah, people have preconceived ideas what weight it should be, because they want to tell people what weight their bird flies at. So when you're doing what you're doing and what Alistair said to you, makes so much sense to me. Play with the weight into the bird's doing what it needs to do, and you'll get it wrong, you'll get it right, and you won't even know you've got it right because you didn't kill that day. And that experimentation, I think, is something that's lost now.
Yeah, well, I would say I ended up. I did get into grouse hawking, and I grouse hawked for about 20 years. I was very lucky. The people, the doyons, then shall we say, grouse hawking, were Steve Franks, Jeffrey Pollard, the Italians, Fricke and Fulco, Count Umberto. And I was lucky. Another late friend, I keep hearing this with me because of my age. Most of them all late. He used to invite me up onto his moor every year, and then he'd do his Great Northern Tour, and we'd set off. So I ended up, these people that were all way up above my head, you ended up flying alongside. And you were interested to see, well, what do they do different to me? Well, they don't do anything different to you. Some were probably better, some were about the same, some were a bit worse. But it's all a basic thing that you're doing. But I got to fly with, they weren't heroes. I've never had heroes. I've had people I admired.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never had heroes.
No.
And it was a privilege to fly at the side of them. And I watched, in fact, there's a really cracking book come out by Patrick Morell on grouse hawking. No, I flew with Patrick and his then hawking companion, Gilles Nautier. I had a few days with him here and there over a few years. Very knowledgeable. And when they cast the falcon off, their eyes never left it. They were watching, not just watching where it was, but they were watching its wing beat. And they could tell whether it wasn't really trying.
Yeah.
Now, one of the lads, well, two of the lads I knew, used to cadge for Jeffrey Pollard for 6 weeks a year. And they'd just come back in and he'd just say, don't give the bitch, or whatever it was called, give it short rations tonight. And you'd see that he could see it wasn't really trying.
Yeah.
Even though to the uninitiated it was. Now, really, again, another late friend of mine, like Martin Hargreaves. Well, Martin perfected the low ground technique of driving around and spotting partridge.
Yeah.
Spotting. Reason he did that because most of the partridge he flew weren't on his ground. Martin sadly left us in 2003, I'm afraid, with a brain tumour. But he perfected that. Now, we used to keep in contact with Martin a lot. And he rang up and I said, how's it going? I said, he said, I'm struggling with a teasel, Billy Whiz. I said, why is that? He said, it's not killing him. I said, is it still going as high? He said, yeah. He said, it's not killing him. What do you think? I said, I think it seems to me like his weight's too high. And he said, well, he said, he's coming down, he's hitting him. He said, he's bouncing up off the bloody plough, getting up and running off. And he's still going a good high pitch. I said, well, that's my opinion. Anyway, about 3 days later, I rang him up. Said, how's the Tearsel going? He said, I've just been out today. He said he's had a brace of partridge. He's back where he was. So I said, what have you done? Well, Martin used to keep particular, very, very, very particular records. He never missed a thing. Everything went down. And he said, when I checked my records, he'd never killed anything above £1.4.5. And I was flying him. His weight had crept up to £1.4 3/4. Now, you wouldn't have thought quarter of an ounce would have made that much difference, but it did. And he said, I ended up taking half an ounce off him. I took him down to 1.4 1/4. He said, brace of porridge. Yeah. So I think what it is, but again, a scientist, probably Foxy, who I know you've interviewed, will probably poo-poo my ideas. But I think what it is, inside them, if the vital organs gets a little layer of fat around it, nature tells them, you can be an opportunist. If it looks a good chance, take it. But you don't really need it. You can get past it. You don't need it. And then when suddenly that layer of fat has dissipated, nature will tell them, you need to kill today.
Yeah. And so
that bit of weight makes the difference.
Yeah. Similarly, I think that we underestimate how hard the fight is for our birds. So it will relate back to this story with Martin's bird. The fight that peregrine has to have once he has to hit a partridge really hard, and then he's got to circle back in. If he's not going to bind to it, which he's not, he's going to circle back. He's got to have a little bit of a ground fight with it, maybe. And there's part of its brain that's saying to it, like, oh man, we can't, no, I don't need that fight right now. No, I'm not up for that. And when you take them low enough, they're at that point where the fight's worth it. This is okay. Yeah, I need this. I've got to have that fight with that bird. I've got to hit it really hard. I've got to do all these things because I really need to eat, And
well, I used to organise. I've organised loads of field meetings in my time because I had good relations with gamekeepers and landowners, and we're on a particular estate, and it was deer grouse. Now, because it was a driven moor, I'd say to the lads, look, hopefully we'll get you a point, but it might not be classic grouse hawking. Mm-hmm. We'll try for a point, but if the birds are too wild, what we're going to have to do is, if we can't get a steady point, you're going to have to put your falcon up, and we'll run the dogs for you. And I had the keeper with me. He knew where the grouse were going to be. So we'd run. Couldn't get a steady point, the grouse would lift. So I said, right, put your falcon up. We'd always get a flight one way down another. Yeah. But we're out this particular day, and this is back to Martin again, and the weight of this Tearsel. And Martin's got his Tearsel up. He said, we're bumping grouse right, left and centre. The bird's at a good high pitch. It never even dipped a wing. Chuck the lure out straight down to the lure, so it's obedient. But the grouse knew. They could tell it's something about the way the falcon's flying. The wing beat might not be different. But when you put a falcon up the next flight, it was meaning it, you'd to damn near kick the grouse up. Yeah. So the grouse could see the difference between a falcon that wasn't that bothered and one that was meaning business. Mm-hmm. I got on with my eagle. I got on on Blue Airs to a grouse moor. He was a dyed-in-the-wood grouse moor keeper. And it ages, I could fly the lower slopes, at rabbits, which didn't bother me. I still got the same high-flying flights. And then one day he let me on the main moor. And I could see he was watching everything. If that eagle had even dropped a wing at a grouse, I never have got on there again.
Yeah.
And anyway, I put her up, and she went high, to 2,500 foot, whatever.
Wow.
Other people estimated the weight, the height, not me. And then I could see Colin chuntering. He was a Yorkshire lad, was Colin. A lot of Yorkshire lads chunter to themselves. And he had a plate of false teeth across the front. And when he was debating things in his head, he used to drop the plate. The plate used to clack up and down as he was thinking. And I said, what's going through your mind, Col? He said, people told me that you put a golden eagle on a grouse moor and all the grouse will get up and fly and leave the moor. And he said, we're having to tread on grouse to get up.
Yeah.
I said, well, right, that's why when they look up, no matter whether it's an eagle or it's a falcon, they know that that bird means business.
Yeah.
And the safest place for them is on the deck.
Yeah.
When the eagles drop down low and fly low and do a rolling flight like you see a harrier do, the grouse then realise we've got to get out of here because we're in trouble, and they can outfly a golden eagle in straight flight.
Yeah.
And they can outfly a peregrine in straight flight.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're in trouble when there's one up there that means it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And that is what it's millions of years of evolution.
Oh, it makes sense to me completely. That, like, the reason they evade, grouse aren't just evading being caught by being the fast and flying bird. They're evading being caught by being tactical. They must know when to break, when to hold, when to do. They must know that, you know, that must, evolution must say to them, look, this is what you need to look for.
If you go out early, I used to go to Isle Lewis every year for about 15 years through John. There, the grouse, they were never driven. They'd lay quite tight. And when you got a point, the first grouse that would break when you put the dog in is the old cock. He would lead the falcon away from his kids. So he knew, get this thing away from here. And then I never called it dumping in. I always said putting in. I think dumping in sounds an appalling bloody thing to give to a wild creature. I would say they put in fairly quick.
Put in, yeah.
That's always been my thing. But said that was my grouse soaking. I flew a goshawk 45 consecutive seasons.
Yeah.
I always flew a goss. Seen some of this country's most stunning goshawks. But my old abiding passion really was the golden eagle.
Yeah, so I'm like, for me, people say about eagle, people talk to me about eagles as if I assume it's like for me, the epitome of falconry is a dog on point on a grouse moor and a peregrine comes down and kills a grouse. That's the epitome of falconry because it takes there's so many elements that have to come together, so many factors. That's the epitome for me. However, I'm just entering I think it's my 20th season with an eagle, and I can't envisage me flying anything but an eagle going forward. So how did the opportunity present itself to you? Were you driving to get an eagle, or did it just pop up and it was an option?
Right, just way back into mid-70s, right? As was a keeper, a friend of another keeper down here, the lad I picked up for. And this other lad went to Scotland and he had some empty badger sets. Would you believe it now in this day and age?
Yeah.
And his boss wanted badgers on the place. So, of course, if you've gone through the field sports world, you can get almost anything. You knew to go to get almost anything. So I said, I'll see what I can do. So we ended up getting 4 badgers, right? And we took them up to Scotland. We ended up with 3 going up to Scotland. We took them to him and we said, there you are. And he said, right, I've got to get off now. I'm going out. I'm meeting some lads. They're flying a couple of golden eagles. And I said, oh, I'd like to see that. And he said, well, I can't really take you. So I didn't have the contact for the badgers. My mate did. So I pulled him to one side. I said, look, this lad really wants to see golden eagles fly. I said, we've done you a favour. He's done you a favour. In my world, you owe him.
Yeah.
So he said, leave it with me. So he rang up and we ended up meeting these 2 falconers up there. I'll not name the first one, but the other one was a lad called Martin Connolly. Now, Martin sadly passed away quite a few years ago. Martin was a rough diamond. He didn't suffer fools gladly. didn't Martin, but he was a good lad, and he said what he thought. And he had a Ayers peregrine. We got there. There's another lad with a immature male golden eagle, which he took under license. Back then, the only way you could get hold of a peregrine or a golden eagle or a merlin was license, and this taken under license. And we ended up, Martin flew this peregrine tearsel just to a dead partridge, put it out. First peregrine I'd ever seen flown. And then we decided to fly this golden eagle. Now, this lad had a male. The lad who I'd given the badges to was looking after a big female, because its owner was in jail, awaiting a murder trial. So I shall not name him, but one or two of the older lads will know exactly who I mean. And he was looking after it. Now, this thing, it's the biggest feat I've ever seen on an eagle. It really is. Anyway, so we gets there. Martin flies his thing. Then the other lad decides to try and enter this highest mill. And it was just rolling pasture ground. There were rabbits everywhere, mixie rabbits hopping about. Within 5 minutes, he'd killed a mixie rabbit. So he was feeding it up. So this lad said, right, I'll get the female. Now, we'd done note with this female, except not feed it for a week. That's all. Didn't know what it weighed or anything. So we're walking down this, off it goes, kills a rabbit. Touch a mixie. As he approached it, it left the rabbit and changed him across the field. Right? So he shouts, hide the rabbit. So I ran across, hid the rabbit, stuffed it under a rock somewhere. It's the eagle stomping about. Cut a long story short, it did this three times. Yep. Then it stuck to the last rabbit. So he's going in to take it off this rabbit. Well, what he had a fork stick, and as it was on the rabbit, he tried to pin it down. He thought he'd pin the jesses down, but he hadn't. And the eagle left the rabbit, swung a foot up, and footed him right through the hand.
Oh.
And you know what?
I've been there. Yeah.
Right through the hand. He ran off screaming, and the eagle chased him again across the field. So this time, what I did, I pulled the head and 4/4 off the rabbit, and I threw it to the eagle. Hid the rest of it. So he ends up, the other three of them, there was my mate, the falcon with the golden eagle, and Martin Conley, were hiding behind a pile of rocks. And Colin, this falcon with the eagle, had footed him through the hand. It was like a cowboy film. They had him laid there, they'd undone his collar, he'd gone a ghastly shade of greeny grey. Blood was pumping like you see an oil fight. Pumping back in his hand. Give me a fag. I don't think he even smoked. He said, give me a fag. Anyway, with this, cut a long story short, the eagle had eaten the rest of the rabbit. So he said, who's going to pick the eagle up? So he said, well, I can't, look at me. Oh, he starts it. He said to Martin Conley, he needs a tourniquet on his arm to stop it bleeding. He said to Martin, rip a lump off your shirt lap. So Martin, in the usual Scottish answer, said no in so many words. You can go. And then my mate said, well, I can't pick it up. This little lad with the eagle said, well, I can't pick it up, so there's only me. So they give me the stick and they give me the glove, and cut a long story short, I picked it up. And as I was walking by with it, I looked at it and thought, what a magnificent creature this is. And I wanted to have another crack with it. I was told, back in the back of the Land Rover. So that was my first encounter.
Yeah.
Close to a golden eagle. The morning after, I rang the lad up because his wife had to take him to hospital because of his mangled hand. And as he walked past that eagle, it launched itself right off the block. He just managed to move his head to one side, and it took his hat off, and it ripped his hat to pieces. And he said he was going to apply for an eagle license that year, and he'd have got one because he knew the bloke that gave the nod.
Yeah.
Luckily, that happened, and he said, I'm not going near a golden eagle ever again. So that was my first encounter. But I was captivated when I had that thing on my fist, just by it, the sheer presence of it.
Yeah, of course.
I just said, well, yes, I would like to fly one, but I ain't flying one on ground like this. I'm going to fly one like I fly my buzzard, like I've seen a wild one from a soar. So about 18 months later, I get a phone call. As this lad, he said, you've always wanted to fly an eagle, a golden eagle, haven't you? I said, well, yes, I've got one here for you. I said, what do you mean? I can't not go near this thing again. Well, what he'd done, he'd had an eagle under license. It had died. And then there was this female, Elsa, that had been making a nuisance of itself in the crow traps in Scotland. It had been turfed out about 3-4 times, and it kept going back in. It had been shot seemingly, but when it were all worked out, it was pellets in her ankles and what have you. So it was given to him, brought into the system, and he was just wearing a double gloss glove. He'd feed her on the fist. Then when he decided, he never left his garden at all. They only had it about 3 weeks. When he decided he was going to withdraw the food, she just squeezed, went through the gloss glove and made his life a misery. So I went to pick it. I said, well, think about it overnight. And I rang it the day after. He said, I don't want it. Come and get it. So when I went, I said, what does it weigh? He said, well, I haven't been able to weigh it for a while. So I said, why? He said, well, as I approach the scales with her on my fist, it will grip tightly my fist with one foot, and it will put its foot on the scales, grip the scales, and will let go of neither. So you carry it back to the block with the scales hanging out of one foot, tie it down, and then throw some food to one side so it went for the food. So that was what I picked up. So I took her home, and I get home about 11:45 at night. And a mate with me, he came in the AV, everything ready for her. I got a block, put her down on the block. I thought, she seems okay. What's this all about? Next minute, whack, the foot came out and it whacked me and grabbed me. And I said, you're going down properly. So I picked her up, put her down again, and then she just gripped. She went straight through me goss glove. Ping, 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 ping. I said to the lad that was with me, for Christ's sake, don't make any sound, don't move. And she got my fingers twisted up into my hand, and you'll know what that's.
Yeah, I've been there, yeah.
I can remember the church clock chimed 12, 1/4 past, 1/2 past, 1/4 to 1. I'm still there. I said to him, I think, pass me a stick, will you, quietly? And I managed to get my stick under my thumb, and she felt that and grabbed that. So I managed to extricate everything else, went back into the house, tipped my goss glove into the sink, and my hand was like a colander. The goss glove was full of blood, and I thought, I'm going to have to sort this out. Well, luckily, I'm an upholstery job, and I had a big lump of pig skin in the work. So the morning after, when I got to work, I made a big overglove that came up over my elbow. Very clumsy thing, but I knew, and I put the double gloss glove inside it. But I thought, well, she can squeeze, but she'll not go through this. So when I picked her up and I got home to take her to the scales to weigh her, I felt her tense up and I felt her start to grip. So I thought, well, I'm not going to get her off me like this. So I spun round 3 or 4 times in a big circle, made her dizzy.
Yeah.
She was bloody glad to get off my fist then and get on the scales. And she was totally unfit. She weighed about 12 3/4 pounds. Gasping, her wings were down when she baited. And we started from there. But I was always wanting to fly her from, I call it waiting on. I don't call it from a soar because.
Me too.
But from a soar, it can be all over the sky.
Exactly.
But I want waiting on is above me.
Yeah, exactly that.
That is what I aim for. And I always I was very lucky. I managed to get hold of an absolute cracking piece of ground that was perfect to work an eagle in this way. There was no footpaths through it or anything. But that's how we started. Again, no telemetry, but I knew I had to keep her under control. But I learned very, very quickly, you can only deceive an eagle, a golden eagle, twice maybe, then that's your lot. You won't deceive it again. And I thought, ain't feeding it on the fist, because all that's going to be is we're going to be squeezing again. So I decided to fly her to a lure. So I would put her on a wall on the cranes, walk away, have a garnish lure, a big hair lure, garnish lure, fly to that. When she landed off and ate that, then I'd put a piece of meat, I had to take it off with another piece of meat. So I thought, what I'll do, I'll chuck a lure out that's ungarnished. Then as she gets near, I'll chuck a piece of meat to one side of it and save me having to take the lure off it. I got away with that twice. She wouldn't come. So at the finish, I thought I'll try an experiment. So I put her on the wall, took the garnish lure on the deck, threw a piece of meat, 18-inch to one side of it, straight to the piece of meat. So I thought, no point of having a lure anymore. Yeah. And every time I brought her back to food on the floor. Don't matter whether it was a little piece. Of course, you didn't want to carry in. So the time you spent with her is sitting at the side of her while she fed.
Yeah.
Well, she trusted you. Well, there's no need to drag it into an edge bottom. He's not going to take it off me. And that's how we started. And I developed from there. I'd take it for a walk on a Sunday morning. And when it lagged behind, I started off around the block. I thought, we need another call. We've got to have a call for food, which I used a feeding whistle, and a call when quarry sighted, which was hare. But I needed a call to bring her over that was the expectation of food, but not the actual food. So while she was on a block, I started off going, come on, come on, come on, come on, and then blowing the feeding whistle and putting the food on the floor. And then extended the time longer and longer and longer. And this was the call I used to bring her over. So you weren't cheating her. It was the expectation of food.
Yeah.
And I've even brought her in Scotland out from one glen out into the glen we were in when she went over the top. Because if you show hare, and there isn't one, you've cheated her. If you feeding whistle and don't feed her, you've cheated her. So, come on, come on, come on, was the expectation of food. And that was my training regime. Don't forget, you've got no telemetry.
Yeah.
When you've got a female eagle at 2,500, 3,000 foot without telemetry, it can go anywhere it wants.
Of course, yeah.
But there has to be an invisible line, invisible creance between you and the eagle. And in all the times I flew her, I've had some long walks because she's lost a lift, something like that. But I've never actually thought she's going to clear off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that is basically how I flew her. But in later years, of course, she got, as they do when you give them that freedom, she got very, very self-employed. She wouldn't leave you, but she wouldn't come back till she was ready.
Yeah.
At the finish, you'd either got to catch her on a kill or out the wind. But when you've given a wild passage eagle all that freedom, it's only to be expected. Well,
yeah, of course. Yeah,
I'm bringing a weight down didn't make any difference. And what brought her into condition, I found, far more than weight control, was the wind. When the wind was there and the wind was in the right conditions, in the right direction for it, she would hunt. I've seen her hunt with 6 front legs of a rabbit's in a crop. I've seen her rouse and mute in mid-air and slice 3-4 foot. That's how much grub she had in her. But I believe after those experiences, I believe in the wild, they will kill and stash.
Yeah.
For when times get hard, I'm convinced they'll do that.
Well, I've having read Mike Tomke's books. Have you read those books at all?
No.
So Mike Tomke's he just had a little place up in Scotland and would just observe the eagles, would just go and watch them every day, watch them breed, watch how they raise young and stuff, see them keep going back to kills that, like, just a young ewe that's died on the moor lambing or something. So they go and they just keep feeding off that, or they kill, then they go back the next day because they haven't taken the carcass. And that's what made me realize that, like, the golden eagle is going to be very opportunistic. It's not going to necessarily hunt through weight reduction. We have to, the way that we fly them on lowland, but in the wild they're going to fly opportunistically. There's a kill. It's in the right position at the right time. I should take it because I'm going to need to eat tomorrow. And so they take it. That's the way that it's always come across from me, how they are in the wild.
I think they will. I think they'll kill and stash. They
Yeah.
will tuck things away. Maybe got a favourite place to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the snow closes, they can also see snow coming before and bad weather coming before you know it's on you.
Yeah.
And I think they get like that. They get in an area to get everything's in their favour. I'm going to make the best of this. It's only my opinion, but I've observed numerous things over the 20 odd years that have led me to believe this. Anyway, I might well be wrong. But that is what I think they'll do. And as I said, if you say what was her best hunting weight, 9 3/4.
Yeah.
9 3/4. But it didn't really matter, when I never used to take around the 10 mark, something like that. But 9 3/4 was the best, I think, anyway. And again, on a kill, I when I removed the kill from her, you'd never see her rummaging about. I give her I'd worked out that the reward for a kill was the skinned out front leg of a rabbit. That's what I worked down to from the initial few first kills, and that's what she got, and that's what she accepted. And when she'd finished eating that, she's not rummaging around the bloody floor where the fur is looking for bits. She'd just either lift off, or if the wind was right, straight up, or she'd land, go on a rock, stand on a rock, have a rouse, have a mute, have a bit of a tidy up, and then up she'd go again. And I had never ever any suspicion that she would she'd have a crack at me or anybody else in the field. She had a go at me once in the early days, and that was my fault because I broke the routine. Yep. What I used to do every time she'd killed is I would let her calm down, give her a reward, and I'd pick her up. I'd clean her beak with my finger and 4 fingers and thumb. Then I'd put my back of my hand out. She'd feek on the back of my hand, which is the most wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
Close their eyes as though they're enjoying it and rubbing the beak. And then I hold my fist up and let her lift off. This particular day, the lad came out that got me this cracking patch of land. And before we set off, he said, can I have my photo taken with it at the end of this? Well, of course you can. Now, he was a rough street fighting lad, this lad. He won more than he lost, I can assure you. And he was a tough lad. Anyway, she killed fairly quick. And the mist was coming in and the rain. I said, look, I'll put her back up again. You haven't had much of a day. Now, when I took the kill off her, instead of going through my routine of cleaning her beak and putting her up, I threw her off. She landed on a rock about 60 yards away, dropped her wings, blew her crest up and launched herself off. And I just said to her, get away from me, I'm in trouble. And she was 3-4 yards away. She's still on both her feet out, head height, coming for my face. And I put my stick up and I knocked her down. She kept coming up. I walked back, knocked her down again, fell flat on my back. I thought, Christ, I'm in trouble now. She didn't do anything. So I got up, stood over her, let her calm down, picked her up. This time cleaned the beak and let her go, went onto a rock, same rock, launched herself off again. And she got halfway to me and I shouted at her, waved my stick, she turned off. And she never, ever came near me or anybody else in the field ever again.
Yeah.
That was my fault because I broke the routine. And
yeah, exactly.
which he refused to do.
Yeah, I think like lots of people who fly eagles generally, I mean, this is obviously a massive generalization, but lots of people who have come into issues with eagles, I think they underestimate how intelligent the bird is. You are dealing with an apex predator. You're not dealing with a goshawk or a harrisawk, but I think that you you make so many mistakes with a sparrowhawk, with a goshawk, with a harrisawk, and it's you get away with it because of the size. You put up with the fact that they bait or a sparrow. Everyone who's flown a sparrowhawk, because a sparrowhawk bait towards their face, they do it. Now you're making mistakes. You're doing something wrong, but you're putting up with it because the bird's so small. When you've got a bird so big as a golden eagle, you can't tolerate those mistakes because the consequences are high, and it's just a nuisance. If you've got a goldie that baits off your arm towards you, it's a hell of a nuisance to put up with. So they're highlighted, and you need to address them more. But I think people overlook. They go straight to, oh, the weight, get its weight down. Oh, his weight, I'll bring his weight up. I'll do this with the weight, and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Take a step back. What's happened? I mean, the only time my female put me on my back. I was flying with a eagle falconer called Steve Field, and we're right at the end of the season. I think we were even maybe into March, and I had a slip at a row, and I've slipped her. We'd been out all day. She'd had a couple of flights, hit a row, didn't hold it, missed a few hairs. Really good day. Right at the end of the day, and we're in a slight small valley, just dropping away. And she went out and she just starts climbing and climbing, and she's now at about 150 feet. Now I fly my birds out of the hood so they don't get any elevation really, so she's just flying up and up, and I was like, wow, she's gonna muller this deer. And she just turned her head and looked at me, and as soon as she turned her head and looked at me, I was like, oh no. So I put my left arm up because I recalled to the glove and she was fine, and I was just like, hey, hey, come on, girl. And she came down, full stoop, teardrop, smashed me, but didn't bind, just hit me off my feet, came back in, tried to smash me again. I kicked my feet at her. And then, so Steve's laughing, but he's running over to me. Then she's hit the deck and she's running at me and she's footing the bottom of my feet as I'm trying to cook her away. And Steve's come over, he's had to intervene, pin her to the ground. I got to my feet, picked her straight up, put her on the glove, and she was just stood there, all stroppy, crest risen. And that's when it really hit me. Nobody had mentioned it to me, or reading books I hadn't heard it, but that's when it occurred to me, she's frustrated. I've flown her so much today, she's missed. I've now given her a flight which I think, oh, she can kill that. And she's thought, what are you asking of me? It's the end of the day. You've asked so much of me. Just feed. And she was just frustrated. And I should have just not, the end of the day, we've had 6, 7, 8, whatever flights, and I'm asking too much of her. And she's shown that with, just feed me. I've had enough of this, and really like put it on me. So I think it's when I suddenly realized you have to monitor how your bird's behaving on the last flight, the flight before, because they're giving you signs. We're choosing to ignore them.
Well, yeah, that, what I forgot to add is that mate of mine, him that wanted a photo taken with her, after he'd seen that performance, I said, right, John, where do you want your photo taken with her? He said, if you think I'm going anywhere near that bloody thing. And he was a rough street fighting man.
Yeah.
He got another mistake coming, kid. He said, I am not going anywhere. I said, there was one lad that used to fly the line. In going way back into the 70s, we all knew one another, right?
Yeah, of course.
You might not fly with them, but we all knew one another, and we all knew who was doing what. Now, there was some lads in Lincolnshire, and this lad whose eagle nailed the Colin, the keeper that time, he would travel from Scotland to fly brown hares on flat fields. Because he was always looking to test his eagle. Now, I wasn't testing mine. I wanted to see the stoop. I didn't care if it come down from 2,000 foot and killed a frog, which it did once. It was the stoop I wanted to see. And I said, well, I'm not interested in testing the eagle, David. I said, all I want to see is a stoop. Now, they went out every time with this big eagle. It's a huge feat, this eagle. Did you ever see, you probably weren't even born then, But there was a program on television called Once in a Lifetime,
Oh.
and that eagle was on there.
Yeah.
It was done in the mid-70s. You weren't born then, were you?
No, I'm 83.
Oh, there you are. And David was on there with it. Anyway, everybody was given a stick, and they were told, if the eagle misses, if it comes at you, don't turn your back on it and run. Wave your stick at it and shout.
Yeah.
Now, what happened? It flew something and it missed. And this lad had got one of those old parkas on with fur, trimmed with fur around the hook. And it saw the eagle coming, and he set off running. And it took him down. And he had to take it off the lad like he was taking it off a kill, so we could get it off him. At the finish, that lad could not go out with that golden eagle again, because every time it saw him in the field, it would bait at him.
Oh, yeah?
And because
Wow.
it knew, as you know, when for first season with Elsa, every time I put her down on the block, she tried to come back at me.
Yeah.
She was testing me, like
Yeah.
a dog that knows you're frightened of it, or a horse that knows you can't ride. And she was testing me, and I knew no way should I jump back. I stand there. And what I used to do, I used to put my fork stick in the swivel, between the swivel, the jessers, and stand there. And I'd say, have you calmed down now? Have you finished? This particular time, I'd had a few bevies, and I see it coming at me, and I put my stick there, but I'd missed the swivel. I thought, Christ, it's getting close. And I just turned to one side like that, and it ripped a great lump out of my jacket. That dissipated after the first season when we came to an understanding. My understanding with her was, I won't take any liberties with you, so I do not expect you to take liberties with me.
Yeah.
But I realised with that eagle, no way could you bugger about with that on your fist. Food on the floor. My fist meant nothing to her, apart from taking her to where we were going to fly, going to hunt. Yeah. Jimmy Woods, who used to fly one many years ago, Jimmy was flying up, he's up in Glenshee, he flew a really good male. That was taken on the licence in 1980. The last eagle licence, by the way, was 1981. That's the last.
Oh, wow.
81. I got mine granted in 80, but I'd already been flying Ailsa for 2-3 seasons, so I ended up keeping Ailsa, shall we say, but that's when they finished. And he got his back down, he got it on his fist. For food, they was calling it to the fist. It landed, a big gust of wind hit him, and it wobbled, and it just didn't have the gestures firm enough, and it lost its balance, and it shot its right foot out, and it grabbed his face, and its talons went right through his cheek. And the only way Jimmy could get that eagle off was to pull it down like that.
Oh.
And rip all the side of his face to get it out. After that, Jimmy never ever fed it on the fist ever again. It was a mistake. It didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
But it did it. And I used to spend many a night in a chair with a glass of malt when I could have afforded it, mulling over my next move. Because, like you said earlier, you make a mistake, shall we say, with a lesser hawk, you might have buggered up a lesser hawk. But you make a mistake with a golden eagle, and you've got a potentially dangerous weapon on your hand.
For sure.
I would never have mine too tame. I would have it so it would tolerate people, but it was always wary of people. Yeah. And if a 2-year-old child ran up to mine with a big fluffy toy, it would bait away.
Yeah.
Never let it get. I've seen 1 or 2 lads on YouTube with them, and they do this and they do that. Then all of a sudden, it's got me. It's footed me. Look at it. It's done this.
Yeah.
And they become, these things aren't stupid. I've had passage goshawks whack me dog because it didn't keep the guts.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And you cannot have, in my view, you cannot have a golden eagle think it can do anything to you.
No.
It needs to be everything regimented, not cruel, and it's not you are the boss and I'm not the boss. We're equal partners.
A partnership, yeah, exactly. And then, so I know falconers who have had an eagle for a few weeks, and they're scared of it. They ring and they say, "I can't get near my bird, and I can't do
And
this."
the
And I'm
eagle
like,
knows they're scared of it.
"Yeah," and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Every time I put that bird back, it'll put one foot on the bow or the block, the other foot on the glove, and it'll beat his wings at me." I'm like, "And what do you do?" They're like, "Well, try and get it off." I'm like, "No, no. You pick that bird up immediately. You walk away from the block with it. You start pushing his head, playing with it. You stand there, and then you reapproach the block again in a while, and you get the bird to step to the block. You don't ever then put the bird back on the block in that circumstance. You don't let the bird know every time you put me back, I threaten you and you stay away from me, because now every time you approach, it's going to think, well, I'll just threaten him and he'll stay away from me. Like,
Well,
you just, and don't be forceful. Just let them know, no, no, that's not, I don't want a relationship where we argue. You'd divorce your missus if that's every time you got in bed, wouldn't you? So that's not the relationship that it wants with you and you don't want with him. You let it know our relationship is based on we work together. So you're coming back off. We'll sort it out. What's our problem? Put it back again.
yeah, I was said mine. She was turfed out of about 4 crops. All she'd had off human beings was aggravation. And then I'd only had her a fortnight, and I noticed a swelling on her ankle. And I whipped her to the vets, and the X-rayed, and she got pellets in her ankles. So that's why she was struggling in the wild, I would have thought.
Yeah.
So I don't know what age she was. A bloke that knew more about eagles than me reckoned she was second season when I got her.
She still had all of her tail was all still fully juvenile.
Oh yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
What I found in the molt, can only go off mine and other people I've spoken to, is they used to have a split molt.
Yeah.
One year they took minimal main feathers out
Yeah.
and made a few body feathers, and the year after they took more main feathers out and less of the body.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
It took her to get a fully brown tail till she was 7.
Yeah, yeah. That very similar to my female.
Oh, I spoke to people on Lewis and that were supposed to be golden eagle experts, and I said, how can you age a golden eagle unless it's got a ring on it? Like, oh, you can go off the colour of the white patches on its wings and the white patches on its tail. So I said, right, you've got one. Well, there's one there. You can see the patch on its tail. How old do you reckon that is? Oh, well, that's got to be 4. I said, well, how do you know? Well, I said, no, you can't.
Yeah.
This isn't just me speaking. It's other falconers that I know that have had eagles. They've all said the same. But it's a split molt. She broke a main primary once. She took a bloody sheep, unfortunately by mistake, of course. And I thought, how am I going to imp this in? I can't leave it. And I ended up getting a 2-inch wood screw,
Mm-hmm.
and I ground the head off. And I checked what bit of feather she'd come off, and I found out, I think it was an 8 that tapered down and went in. And I ended up imping that feather in with a wood screw
Wow.
on her, and it stayed there till she molted it out.
Yeah.
But she also had a problem once towards the end where she started breaking main feathers, and it seemingly the feathers in her ankles started to dissipate, and it affected her system, so she weren't taking the full goodness out of her food, and the feathers were brittle. It was terrible to see, but I
Yeah.
could do nothing about it. But luckily, it didn't kill her. She died of something burst in her heart. I had a PM because when she did go, you always think, as you know, it's your fault.
Yeah.
What have I done wrong? And what the vet who PM'd her did say was she had a very small egg in her that had been in there years. So I was lucky that she didn't die of egg peritonitis years earlier. She sadly passed away at 30, and
Yeah.
gave me the most wonderful 28 years of my falconry life, really.
And you never that was your only eagle. You never fancied
No,
anything other than that.
I've been offered them. I
Yeah.
said, no. But you're in the prime. Well, you're almost in the prime of your life.
Thank you very much.
What age are you now?
So I'm now 41, but I was a professional fighter for 20 something years, so I'm really 67.
Well, you get whatever anybody tells you. You don't think it will happen to you, but it will. It happens
Yeah.
to everybody. And I ended up at 62.
Yeah.
The places I flew weren't flat fields. I know flat fields, you get boots full of bloody mud caked all over them.
Yeah.
I flew the high ground. I was lucky. I had access to a really good grouse moor in the borders. Once they'd finished shooting, which was the end of September, I could go up there anytime. The moor was that well kept, apart from trying to cross a burn with an old Viva van, you could go anywhere on the moor with the roads they put in. So I would just pull in, look for wind direction and go there. And the keeper knew his job. He always knew where the blue hares would be. And you get a lot of blue hares around where there's been a burn, where fresh heather's coming through.
Yeah.
So I knew the area. She did take my dog once by accident.
What dog was it, Ron?
English pointer.
Yeah.
And I never took the dog out to get. Basically, what happened, I was working her. I'd worked at GSP with her. I'd worked at English pointer, Linnet with her. And then she was waiting on. There was a big, deep gill hole in front of me. Next minute, I see her turn over and stoop. And then she got about 50 foot off the ground and the dog came out. And she just opened the wings, flared her wings and went back up. I think at first, because it was liver and white, I think she thought it's a fox.
Yeah.
And then she was up again, same thing further on. The next minute, she didn't pull out. I heard this bloody great howling noise. And when I got there, she'd muzzled it. She'd gone round the front
Yeah.
and she muzzled it. One foot, the hind talon was through its throat, underneath its throat. The other one was on the back of a scruff. Anyway, the only way I could get her, luckily I had somebody there with me. The only way we could get her off was to unwind her off the hind talon. And at the finish, I thought, right, I ordered her. And I thought, right, Christ, we're walking back. I said, that's it, the end of the day. And I cast the dog out. The dog she just ran off and came on point. So I thought I took a risk. So I stood back and I said to the lad that was with me, move forward. I'm going to tell the dog to get in and tell me what it is. So I stood back, shouted, get in. And he shouted, it's a hare. So I just whipped the hood off. She bobbed 2 or 3 times, saw it, and she's flying straight towards the dog. I thought, we'll see. I think it was a mistake. We'll see. And she completely ignored the dog, flew over the dog, and luckily took the hare. So it was a mistake.
Yeah. I mean, I've got similar stories. I think so. My eagle that I fly now, my male, has hit all of my dogs. And so I was a GWP man, and I worked a English pointer most recently, and that's gone, and I've now got a spaniel. But so my bird has hit most of my dogs, and I think 9 out of 10 times it's done it, it's been either through frustration or mistake. I've had my bird's flown over the top of my dog, chased a hare, missed, recalled over. I've dropped my dog and he's recalled over the top of my drop dog, perfectly fine. 2 slips later, it's flown and hit the dog, and I'm like, right, the bird's getting frustrated and it's associating the dog with the reason it's not. So I would correct those mistakes, and then now, I've like my birds hit the dog in cover because the dogs ran in, so it's flushed maybe like a deer or something in a cover strip, and I've slipped the bird. The bird's flying above the cover strip, and the dog's chased the deer and is putting on the dog, and I'm like, well, a mistake. Got there, and the bird's let go of the dog, but it's hit it by the sound, and I'm like, just mistakes, and it's never grabbed a dog and been trying to kill it. Let's say, it's always been a mistake.
Well, basically, because mine was a passage and she hunted in the wild as well. When I went there and I see it, it had gone round the front and it had muzzled it and it was holding the dog away. I thought, that's not out of a fox. It thinks it's a fox.
Yeah.
It knows a danger area, and it's got it. And after that, I was never. But where I could fly my eagle regularly, he wouldn't have a dog on anyway because of the sheep.
Yeah.
So it didn't bother me too much. But after that, I thought I cannot risk. I took my dog to the vets. Luckily, the hind talon had missed every main organ under its chin. It
Yeah.
had come right through and penetrated its tongue.
Yeah.
But luckily, and I thought I ain't letting my dog anywhere near that again. I can't risk that again. And
Yeah.
and I didn't, and it might have cost me a few hairs or what have you, but I'd sooner not have that than me injuring
Yeah.
any dog.
So what did she take, mate? Elsa, what did she had fox as well? She had fox in
I
hair.
didn't want her on anything big.
Yeah.
The only time she ever set off after a fox, which was a black one, funnily enough,
All right.
she lost the lift and landed. I wasn't interested in big quarry. I was interested in flying style. I took an awful lot of high ground rabbits with her
Yeah.
because I had access. That ground I had was in the high Yorkshire Dales. It was limestone cliffs. You sometimes you get rabbits thick end of 5 pound, big grey things they were.
Yeah.
But it was flying style I wanted. I flew a rabbit, brown hair, blue hair.
Yeah.
I was lucky with the blue hairs because I had access to that absolutely cracking bit of ground after end of September. Brown hairs, if I got on an estate in the high Pennines, there were brown hairs fine, but mainly I flew at the high ground rabbits really, and I had the most cracking sport with them. These things aren't. I had to use a ferret once to enter her. I took her. This again was just amazed me. Uh, I had a. I tried to enter her from Boxing Day. I got her late October, beginning of November. I got her off this lad who she'd made his life a misery, and I tried to enter on Boxing Day. And she grabbed a couple of hairs. These were off the fist, by the way, because I said she still wasn't my eagle.
Yeah.
And we were all up to that point. And then this mate of mine took her up to his place. It got to May, first week in May, and she still hadn't been entered. And he went, it's up in the high dales. Anyway, I kept her on my fist, and the rabbit bolted way in front. She went after this rabbit, missed it, and then she hit an updraft, went over the hill. And then next minute, I see her climbing. She went higher and higher. I thought, Christ. The deal was, if I couldn't do anything with her, I kept her back until late spring, and I took her back up to Scotland from where she was trapped and let her go. That was the deal.
Yeah.
This day, she hit her updraft. She went up and up and up and up. And then she started circling and she started making, it was like a wheel sound, a sound of wheel like that, not like you normally hear off your eagle.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, Christ, she's off. I'm going to have to tell him when I get home. She's gone. And it must have been up for half an hour, right over me. I had a dead rabbit on a line. I dragged that, didn't make a scrap of difference. And the next minute, she put in a big 45-degree stoop and landed on a rock 60 yards away from me. And I thought, what the hell do you make of that? She could have gone anywhere she wanted, but she didn't. Anyway, Terry, the lad I was with, said, do you want to carry on? And I said, well, I don't want to back up there again, I can assure you. He said, I'll go and get the ferret. So he went home and got a ferret. We found a hole. I stood back, cut a long story short, put the ferret in. She took the rabbit like an old pro. And on the way home, I thought she could have gone. She didn't go.
Yeah.
She preferred to stop with me for some unknown reason. And she
Yeah.
was obviously in decent hunting, Dick, by the way she took that rabbit. And that was the start of our adventure.
Wow.
I finished her for the season then, of course, and I started the season after. I got invited to a Scottish field meeting, a British Falcon Club field meeting, and she performed stunningly in front of everybody. And two of the best things anybody could have said to me was one of the lads was walking back to his car, Martin Connolly, his eagle wasn't in good fettle, and Ailsa was flying, and his eagle suddenly looked up, and Martin looked up, and he said, "Look at that wild one up there." He said, "If only we could get our trained ones to do that." And Steve Penn, who was with him, put his binoculars on it, and he said, "I got news for you, Martin. It's got a pair of jesses on it." Now, to me, what an ultimate accolade that is.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, I mean,
Experienced keeper and falconer thought it was a wild one.
yeah, incredible.
Martin, he just said, "If that had been my eagle today, I'd be a proud man tonight."
Yeah, incredible. I mean, it's having seen Roy's bird Cappy fly in similar sort. Like I've flown up at Glenshee many times, and see him. Yeah, up at Glenshee, and
Was Jimmy Woods keeper then?
I don't know who was the keeper because Roy arranged it. I've been up there many times, up on just up by the ski slope and stuff, all around that area.
Jimmy Woods, the lad whose face got ripped open.
Okay, yeah.
That was on Glenshee.
I'll call Roy after this and I'll ask him.
Well, Roy rang me up after I lost my last goshawk. I've known Roy for donks, and he said to me, "You've lost your goshawk." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Look," he said, "when I started," he said, "it's because of you I got interested in eagles."
Yeah.
He said, "There's a male, an Avery bred male goshawk here from one of my parents for you. It's here if you want it." I didn't take it because I said to Paul, "That's going to be my last. So if you do speak to Roy, give him my best, will you?"
I'll call him after this, mate, and I definitely will give him your best. So when was that? When was your last season, Ron? When was that your last season?
What, with a hawk?
Yeah.
Oh, about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
What happened was the one before, I shouldn't have flown it. I flew it in atrocious conditions. Cut a long story short, it went over some cliffs and killed. I couldn't get to it. And by the time I could get grips to it, day after, it was full up and it was away. I followed it for Christ knows how long, and then I picked it up dead. And what it had done, it had eaten a prick pheasant.
Oh.
It had got lead poisoning.
Yeah.
And I said to Val, we had a real hell of a row because I put my life at risk trying to get it back. And I said, my last one will be my last one. I thought it would take me into my 80s. Whoops, cut a long story short, it got aspergillosis.
Oh.
And I lost her. So I kept to my agreement. It was probably the right time. The rabbits have gone. The quarry's gone.
Yeah.
So the last few times I was out with the goss, I never got a proper slip. And it was getting harder and harder and harder. So I kept to my word, and that was it. I still miss it. I keep in touch with a lot of the lads. But I'd gone on longer than most of my generation because I was still active at probably 78, something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
With the eagle, of course, I lost her in 2006, 24th of January. So there comes a time when, unfortunately, it happens to everybody.
But were you living? Where were you living when? So, because now you live down south, obviously. Where were you living when you finished up with Elsa?
I was in Poole. What I used to do, a mate of mine lived up near Runcorn, and I used to go up and stop with him for 2 or 3 days.
Oh, nice.
Lovely, and occasionally, I would leave Poole at 5:30 in the morning, drive 360 miles to the Yorkshire Dales. No, I'm all right, thanks. Fly the Eagle, and then drive back home again.
Just move you've gone, the microphone's got a bit quiet, mate. Move your phone again or whatever you're on.
Yeah, what happened was sometimes I'd get up I'd leave at 5:30 in the morning, drive 360 miles up to the Yorkshire Dales,
fly
the Eagle, and then drive back again.
Wow.
Again, back at 12 at night. You know,
Yeah.
The main of my flying was done when I lived up there.
Yeah, of course.
That's when we had our best years.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with eagles. When look, I got friends who are way more committed eagle falconers than I am. I love flying my bird. I fly my bird as much as I can locally. For the past how many seasons I've been traveling to Lincolnshire 5, 6, 7, 8 times, Norfolk, Cambridgeshire on meets that we do. Doing 400 quid weekends and stuff. And I've got friends who are doing that every weekend and they're really committed. I'm not one of these people who judges a good eagle, a bad eagle. I judge how they fly. It's a good flight, a bad flight. But for me, my bird has killed every season that I've flown it. It's took deer, fox, and hare. My previous female, I fly male now. My previous female did the same. My male is now 13 years old, and I'm like, what? I take my bird out. It chases. I don't like killing things. I'm a hunter. I like to hunt things. I'd much rather walk 10 miles with a rifle, stalking a deer, than sit in a high seat for half an hour. I'm a hunter, so I like to go out. I like to see my bird fly, chase, like manipulate flights. And for me, I just think people underestimate the amount of effort it can take to fly a Goldie, and that's the rewarding bit. We put so much effort in
Well,
just to see them do what they do.
last time I saw Roy was at the Vowley, the falcon racing.
Yeah.
And I then got a message from him a couple of days after saying, look, if you fancy, I'm going to a eagle meet in Lincolnshire. Do you fancy coming? Well, I can't afford because I'm on the pension now, and I'm on the basic pension, which is 169.50 a week. That's all.
Yeah.
I can't afford all that anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm still interested. I still follow it on the internet, but my days of actually hunting a bird have gone, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Between us, we'll try and get you a day out with the Eagles if you fancy on some flatland stuff. We'll figure out, mate, getting you there, all that sort of stuff. We can make that work. If you want a day out, we'll get you a day out on the Eagles, mate. The money's not a problem. We'll sort all that out.
Very kind, but that's why I can't get involved anymore.
Yeah.
Because of lack of funds. It's that simple.
Yeah. Of course, mate.
You should have said, you should have done this, that, and the other, but I had a life and I lived a life.
Yeah. Mate, well, listen, you said earlier on about not having any money when you were growing up and stuff like that. But from talking to you and hearing stories, mate, you've been rich all your life because for me, I couldn't, how could I mean, I'm like you. I'm never going to be rich because I do the things that I love and I'm passionate about, not the things that make me money. But what amount of money could I pay to have your experiences? There's no amount of money in the world. So,
I'm very lucky. I'm financially poor, but I'm friends rich.
yeah.
And I really wouldn't have it any other way, to be quite honest. I've got some wonderful friends, mainly all of them through falconry, and all lads I've known since I started in this game. And there's not many of them left, I must admit. But that's how it is. I've had such a wonderful life, to be quite honest. I've worked hard, but I've never made out, and I never will make out. But money isn't the motivating factor to me. As long as I had enough to do what I wanted to do, that's how it is. I had to have open heart surgery 6 months ago. I had to have a replacement aortic valve and a couple of heart bypasses. And according to my doctors, I've made an absolute incredible recovery. And I'm still here to fight another day.
Yeah, that's all those 8 mile walks with your brown hair. See, that's what's done that. Ron, listen, mate, I'm so glad we got this done. For a man who's synonymous with eagle falconry in the UK, and if you fly an eagle in the UK and you don't know the name Ronnie Moore, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should look back. For the way that you were doing things compared to everybody else. Some amazing names now in eagle falconry, but you are right at the beginning with those guys, and it's been a pleasure to read all the stories over the years that have popped up about you in falconers magazines and stuff, and then hear stuff from people who knew you on the scene throughout the years. but it's been even better to sit down and talk to you. So thanks so much for today.
That's very kind. Thanks a lot, Wes, and you look after yourself.
Will do. You stay on there, mate. We'll end this and I'll say goodbye to you properly.
All right. See you in a bit. God bless.